Virtual reality. What a strange oxymoronic phrase. In the modern day, we're always being torn between the here and now of the real world and the virtual worlds we increasingly inhabit. We have online communities of friends we've never met, avatars behind whose masks we develop personalities different to our own. We attend mundane meetings from our sofa, or join vast fantasy battles as chaotic neutral elven warrior mages. Out here in meat space though, away from my work and my phone and my addictive computer games, it feels pretty great. We're always being encouraged to get outside more, and for good reason. There are myriad psychological benefits to getting out in the nature. From reduced stress and anxiety, to better sleep, to an improved attention span. And what better place to experience the glorious outdoors than Dartmoor? Today I'm yomping around Burrator and experiencing everything the moor has to offer, taking in the stunning views over the hills, exploring mossy historical ruins, listening to the sounds of the birds in the morning as they prematurely herald the arrival of spring, and pondering the myths of the moor, like the supposed sunken village complete with ghostly chiming church bells that some believe lies under the water here. But what if you couldn't get out to experience this? Is there a way for those less able to yomp to experience some of nature's benefits? And if so, how would that work? In today's episode, I'll be speaking to a legend in the field of virtual reality and discussing how the work he does helps connect people with Dartmoor. Oh, and he'll also be revealing what really lurks in the depths of Burrator Reservoir. Welcome back to the Dartmoor podcast. Professor Bob Stone holds a chair in interactive multimedia systems at Birmingham University, where he is also director of the Human Interface Technologies team. They research and design interactive technologies for use in healthcare, defence, education, therapy, and who knows what else. If I were to list all of Bob's achievements here, then we'd be here a long time. So by way of introduction, here are the three things that really jumped out to me when I looked into his career. Firstly, he is Professor of Everything VR, an incredible academic. Just look at all those letters after his name. Secondly, he created the first tactile feedback glove for use in virtual reality environments. And thirdly, he is credited with introducing VR to the Russian space program. Here's my chat with Professor Bob Stone, recorded, perhaps aptly, over Zoom. Welcome to the Dartmoor podcast, Professor Bob.
It's not a podcast.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That's great. Are all those things true then? Is that accurate? The first glove and introducing it to the Russian space program?
Yeah. The glove is a funny one because it's interesting. I'm very critical online about current gloves, tactile feedback gloves, haptics they refer it to.
Right.
But I designed this, invented this, and then I worked with a guy who did all the pneumatic animatronics with Spitting Image, the original Spitting Image TV series, and we produced that glove that had little air balloons that blew up. So that's one of my claims to infamy. The Russian Cosmonaut Training Center, yes, it was acknowledged at a conference that I introduced VR into the Cosmonaut Training Center. They even made me an honorary Cossack.
Oh wow,
as a result.
Can you do like the dance then? Is that one of the abilities it confers on you?
There was a dance involving ladies dressed in traditional gear, and the BBC made me do that, and I swore I would never ever make myself look so stupid ever again. I have done, but not dancing with one of those Russian hats on.
So, VR, people won't necessarily understand what that is. I mean, is this VR? We're talking on Zoom now. Is this virtual reality?
Well, not really. I mean, people just refer to Teams and Zoom and WebEx and all that business as virtual meetings. They're not really. I mean, they're just tele-recordings using video. To me, virtual reality is all about three-dimensional worlds that we construct. And then you provide the user or the person who's interacting with it with the most appropriate kind of equipment to explore and interact.
So it's much more immersive than this. And you say like the 3D environment, I'm imagining the sort of the headset. So wherever you turn, you're sort of immersed in it.
Yes, I mean, that's right. Even just to give you an example, my kids love this. I mean, the kind of headsets we're using now, in contrast to back in the 90s, are things like this. This is the Vive Flow, which I put on for a couple of seconds. It makes me look like something out of the Fly. But very lightweight, pretty good imagery, and it's okay if you're sitting down and you just want to move around, look up and down. But that's the kind of thing we're doing now, and it's come on in leaps and bounds.
With the virtual reality things, they're not like they're not sort of hyper real, are they? We're not sort of on the in the holodeck on Star Trek yet. But I guess the interesting thing is that doesn't really sort of matter at all, does it? It's once you're in there and you're immersed, it probably has just as much an effect as if it was sort of really, really realistic.
Yeah, I mean, we're decades and decades away. You and I won't be on this planet when something like the holodeck is invented. We can walk around, you can taste, you can, But yes, increasingly, I mean, we're now experimenting with smell. Sound is absolutely well developed. We can achieve quite high resolution with some of the software engines that we use. We use Unity, Unreal, and what have you. But I think you're right. As long as there is enough information being displayed to the user that sucks them in and gets them to look around, so that they're focusing on the content and not the fact that maybe the granite rocks on that tour are a bit grainy. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. As long as what they're doing is exploring and finding something new, that's what matters.
These seem like very disparate things, virtual reality and Dartmoor. Where do they come together then?
Right. To cut a long story painlessly short, as I say, I was born and bred in Plymouth and educated in Plymouth. And I used to, in between revising for A-levels, I used to get on the bus and go up to Dowsland, walk across Yenadon Down, sit down and just look out over Burrator, look out over Sheepstore and just chill. And it was kind of my aim when we started doing research at the university to look at how we could bring virtual reality scenes of nature into the hospital, into care homes, that I would bring my students and researchers down to Devon, because I'm biased, totally biased. And so it was just it was a natural choice to come back to Burrator. And not just Burrator, but Burrator is where we started to build these natural scenes. But it was only because we started talking to people when we were down there doing our crazy stuff. People came up and asked us, what are you doing down here? As the gorgeous people down there do. That they suddenly started pointing us in the direction of artifacts that were behind the rhododendron. The old bridge mounts that are down there, the old railway line, and it just thought, well, this is fantastic. There's so much heritage here that people who turn up in their car, get themselves a Willie's ice cream, look at the water and say, that's nice, get back in their car and then leg it, they're missing it. And I thought, this is perfect for virtual reality.
One of the historical places brought to life by Professor Bob's VR team was the site of Burrator and Sheepstore Halt, a railway station built largely to ferry workers to and from their jobs building the dams. It was demolished in 1956, and little more than a square of concrete and a couple of rusty gates now remain. I had assumed that the VR station had been built as an educational tool for school history lessons, but the real reason was even more interesting.
We're finding that there's this thing called reminiscence therapy, where senior citizens like to see things from the past, and that actually helps them in terms of certainly for early onset dementia, mental well-being. So we're definitely using heritage for education, such as the Virtual Mayflower project that we did in 2020, that we finished in 2020. But increasingly, the projects we're doing have a healthcare impact. So it's a double whammy for us. It means that we can give back to the local population as well. I think I've spent so much money on eBay collecting postcards, and there are a huge number of postcards of Burrator and Sheepstore Halt on eBay. And there's some of the people we deal with up there. One guy lives in Dowsland. The chap who runs the Nightstone tea rooms at Harrowby, they've been able to contribute and point us in the direction of really, really good material. So that enables us to pull these things together.
Yeah, I actually stopped at Harrowby as well and had a little cycle around sort of the airfield there. What was the project there? What were you doing?
Well, that was looking at augmented reality, where you take 3D models and other media and superimpose them on the real world. Again, it's kind of a heritage thing. We've had demonstrations where we've had Spitfires because the dispersal pens around Harrowby are still there. They're still extant. So we've had a Spitfire firing up, ready to take off in there, and then a few years ago at the 1940s event that they hold there more or less annually, we sort of reproduced the visit to Harrowby by President Truman back in 1945, because his sacred cow landed at Harrowby Airport because he couldn't get into St Morgan at Newquay. So we used augmented reality just to have the sacred cow, which one of my students literally built from scratch, door opening, and Harry Truman there with his fedora, his patent fedora on his head, waving to the crowd. That was great fun.
I remember when I first visited Longstone Manor, in my Pixie's House episode, it seemed like quite a sad little ruin. But as Bob was to explain, there's more to it than meets the eye.
Built allegedly in the 13th century and then upgraded in 1633 by Elford, as of Yelverdon, ye old Elford town, as it was called. And it was abandoned in the 1920s when they raised the level of the reservoir yet again, because I believe there are hygiene issues. But Longstone Manor it's interesting. A lot of it's submerged, except last year when there was a humongous drought, as you recall. But the whole estate, when you see the line drawings of what Longstone Manor and the farmhouse as it became, people don't see this. They walk onto that little patch, the Longstone Peninsula, and they see the ruins of what was basically one tiny part of what the estate was. And they may see the windstrew just a little bit further on, the cider press wheel, the troughs, etc., and they don't get an idea of how extensive that manor and that estate actually was. And that's what we try to do with virtual heritage: is make the invisible visible.
And was that what sort of led to the searching underwater at Burrator, or was that just sort of a coincidence as well that they sort of linked up?
No, I always wanted to know what was underwater, because no matter how many times you tell people, there is no mythical village on the bottom. There is no mythical church. Well, there is now, because we built one in virtual reality, but there is no mythical church where the spire appears during drought and then there's a ghostly bell that rings. Sadly, that's rubbish. But there is a farmhouse down there. There is the remains of Sheepstore Bridge. And if you look at the 1800s map, late 1800s map, you can trace all the hedgerows and the roads and the Clapper Bridge over Drakesleet. And I thought, well, it'd be interesting to try and find out exactly what is down there. So when we teamed up with the company from Falmouth, and they brought along their autonomous surface vessel, which had quite a powerful sonar on board, and we got permission to do this, as we do with our drone work. But they were able to scan up and down the reservoir and give us the sonar data, which we could then convert into virtual reality and start matching it with the 1800s map and to see exactly what was left down there.
when you did this, you sort of stumbled across something sort of unexpected or unusual down there. And did that lead to you coming back a sort of second time to sort of look at that in more detail?
Second, third, and fourth. We're constantly discovering new things about Borator and coming back with technology to find out. Yes, it was near to the dam, and in between the two, the foundation blocks, the 1920s, late 1920s suspension bridge that was built there. There were these little, quite smooth, spherical blips that went all the way across the reservoir, and we couldn't work out what that was. But fortunately, I'd done a presentation where this lovely lady, I can't remember her surname, Mavis from Meavy sent me just a handful of postcards. One of them had obviously been taken in the 1940s, and you could just make out two little strands of black blips going across the top of the reservoir. I thought, now this is interesting. So went into, obviously some of the Dartmoor information repositories, the national repositories, and I managed to collect a whole series of documents, some of which that were actually classified as secret from the 1940s, which confirmed that the torpedo nets that they used to protect the ships in Plymouth Sound, a couple of those were removed and put along the or parallel to the main dam at Sheepstore. So they had two sets of nets. One had a shallower net than the other.
Yeah.
I thought, well, it must be the remain, but after all this time.
It seems that in 1941 a Luftwaffe spy plane had been seen over Borator, raising suspicions that the Nazis intended to bomb the dam and disrupt the water supply to the city of Plymouth. Back then, the only accurate way to destroy a dam from the air would be by firing torpedoes into the reservoir itself, and the simple solution to defend against this was to build a mail net across the dam to intercept them.
We've got little submersibles, little remotely operated submersibles, and we took those up and put them in. We had almost given up, and I took the controls and just literally put the thing on a crash dive, took it straight down. Lo and behold, not only did one of these big 4-foot diameter spheres come out of the mist, Titanic-like, but it was resting on a whole bed of 17-inch diameter chainmail nets. They are still down there, and it's incredible. And apparently these are T-class torpedo nets for the because you have to, being nerdy, I have to find out more details. But yes, they're still down there, and we believe from the work, the dives last year, that they do extend all the way across the reservoir, parallel with the main dam. So that was my Titanic moment. I was really quite excited when we found those.
Yeah, I bet. It's a really, really cool thing to find. And just the idea that sort of no one really sort of knew they were down there. It was just hidden in this old document, and someone must have just sort of sunk them. You think they'd sort of tidied them away or something. We just thought, oh, we'll just sink that, and just sort of lost to memory.
Yeah, I'd love to find out how they did scupper them. I would have thought that the easiest way, because they're pretty much intact, but I would have thought they may have fired a 303 rifle and maybe let them sink. But nobody from Meavy, the historical guys that we deal with in Dowsland, they swore black was white. There was nothing down there.
Yeah.
Southwest Water, Southwest Lakes, not an idea. So it came as a bit of a shock to everyone that these nets were still down there and extant across the width of the reservoir.
Is that it for Dartmoor? Are you going to come back and do some more virtual reality stuff on Dartmoor in the future, do you think?
Oh, you try and keep us away. Yeah. Absolutely. In fact, it would be really good for people to give us some suggestions. We've done, one of the things we're keen to do on Dartmoor are things that people can't see. So if there's anyone that is aware of things like caves, or maybe even barrows, kissed veins, cairns that are accessible, anything that's related to the war or security that's underground, and that we can find out how to get permission to go under. We'll come down with our kit in the van, and we'll be out there with our drones and whatever. You can't keep us away, I'm afraid.
That's amazing, Bob. Thank you very much for coming and talking to us. I think that's absolutely perfect.
That's a great pleasure. No, thanks for all the questions too.
I really enjoyed my chat with Bob Stone, a naturally funny and engaging man an absolute expert who politely answered even my stupidest questions eruditely. And I love what he's doing too, using this technology in such an enthusiastic and creative way for benevolent ends. The ubiquity of computer technology in modern society can seem frightening at times, and it's easy to see the virtual and the real as being at odds with one another as we are dragged away from our connection with nature by an obsession with the synthetic. So it was great for me to see that people like Bob Stone and the HIT are challenging that rather simplistic assumption and finding ways that technology can actually connect us with nature and our past. So, my Dartmoor-loving viewers, if you do know of any underground places that he and his team could explore, then let us know in the comments. I'm sure someone out there must have a good suggestion for him. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you next time.